Greetings out there in YouTube land. This is Morris Man. As always, I thank you guys for coming to my channel. I'm going to entitle this video something that I noticed that might be helpful to you guys. Because nothing beats having knowledge. Knowledge is king. The more you know, in most cases, I had received, because I have a tabbing service, $15 to $20 per song, 2 song minimum. So lately I've been getting a lot of bass tabs or requests because the majority of the people were sending guitar requests. And the bass tabs are a little more time consuming because you got to account for every note, excuse me, every note in the cover. If you're playing along with the record, you want to, match up every note. With the exception, sometimes there are notes that's like turnaround notes or notes that you can barely hear or ghost notes. So it's a little more time consuming than just playing chords. So I received from a gentleman several requests for bass tabs. And it was a good mixture of stuff from the 70s and recent stuff. And what I noticed as I was going through the selection that he picked, and mainly the newer stuff, I noticed this because back in the 70s, and I'm going to try to make a long story short because this is important, R&B music changed in the 80s. And the reason why it changed was for this reason: cocaine. Now one might be asked, what the hell does cocaine got to do with the change of R&B music? I'm going to tell you what happened in the 80s with cocaine. When crack cocaine hit the streets, it made a lot of street dudes rich. I mean, rich. And they had to account for that money when it came to the artists and the IRS. So what they started to do was take that dirty money and start investing in legitimate businesses. And the majority of those guys started record labels. Record labels literally sprung up overnight in the 80s because these dudes was trying to launder and hide that dirty money. And also they had a love for music, even though they were not musically inclined and they were not musicians. So they start dabbling, and that's was the birth of the R&B dabblers. Guys just playing with one hand and sampling other people's stuff, putting it on their records and claiming it to be theirs, getting sued. So come 80s time, when all this record labels popping up, it changed the course in R&B music. Because again, prior to that, music was consistent of professional musicians, professional engineers, professional producers, the whole professional writers, the whole 9 yards. And then again, usher in the 80s, you got guys who just, I'm dabbling, I'm a DJ and I'm cutting a record or I'm making a record. So I say that to say this: the group of songs that he gave me, the ones that were written or released like less than 10 years ago versus again the 70s stuff had a structure and a discipline. Because shout out to old school Larry. Larry said, I know you're a seasoned studio musician because you're so disciplined. I listen to you playing. You're not out adding all that other stuff. I'm like, because my name is not on the marquee. When my name is on the marquee, then I'll add all that other stuff. But when you just a hired hand, you fall in line, because the singer is the centerpiece and the music is the backdrop. Unless somebody like Lenny Williams, who's a professional or legendary jazz drum, okay, he's the head man, so you expect to hear extra stuff coming from the percussion section. Stanley Clarke, he's the head man, he's the bassist, so you can expect to have all this extra stuff, intricate stuff in the bass line. Marcus Miller too. But when you're just a hired hand, you follow the script. But I noticed that the stuff that, again, that was recorded less than 10 years ago, I'm listening to, because I'm trying to tab this stuff. I'm like, I can't tab this because the bass player's adding too many ghost notes, too much improv, because you're supposed to save that stuff for the live performance. When you're in the studio, you keep it uniform. You do add a little flair and some ghost notes here and there, but it's like when you get to one point in the song and it circles back to that other point or circles back to that, you should be playing the same thing. It's still now, man, I'm playing all this extra other stuff. So I thought I would mention that because for you up and coming musicians, be aware that if your name is not on the marquee, keep it uniform. Sometimes I see players you know, and drummers are guilty of this too. Just too much, man. It's like, it's just too much. That's different if it's a song that is written to center the talent of a specific musician on the track. Good example, George Duke, Reach For It. It was written where the bass player was going to show his stuff, and that was a legendary bass. I think his name is Byron Wright that did it. Great job. I mean, he did a great job with the bass thing, but that song was specific for that reason. It wasn't that the singing was carrying the song. It was the extremely well done bass line and solo of the bass player in that song. So again, the reason why I'm doing this video for you young guys, you young bass players, keep your uniform. You know that you shouldn't be all over the place in the song unless, again, your name is on the marquee or they specifically want you to do that, like a Reach For It. But I noticed that because some of them songs I had to tell one of my subscribers, like, I can't do this, man, because they're all over the place. You know, and that's another thing as an artist. You want to keep that in mind when you're recording a song, because if it becomes a #1 hit, you want everybody to be playing your songs. The dudes in the basement, the dudes in the nightclub, and then you want people to buy it. But if it's so intricate and so busy, you could forget about the guys in the basement trying to play it and forget about the guys in the clubs trying to play it, unless they're going to do their version and kind of scale it down. But those are things, it's like foresight, you know, have mind of that ahead of time instead of after the fact. Because another good example, when I go into the studio, if I'm just the only guitar player, I'm not going to add 3 other parts to it as far as layering it, you know, overdubbing it. Because guess what? If it becomes a hit, it's time to play it live. You don't have to go hire 2 other guys to play that part, those 2 other parts that you added. So those are things that you got to think about when you go into the studio to record a track. Because I told you guys before in another video, there were a lot of artists that kind of wasn't thinking about that. And Parliament was notorious for that, because I kid you not, I went to a couple of Parliament concerts and people got up and left because they're like, this shit don't sound nothing like the record. Too many studio tricks, too many overdubs that you can't reproduce on stage unless you hire some additional players to play those parts. Again, you don't want to go into a studio being the only guitar player in the mix and there are 4 different guitar parts going. You know, and it's like, okay, come live, are you going to hire 3 other guys to do those other parts? Or are you just going to omit a lot of it, and a lot of people will notice that all these other parts are missing? You know, so I'm going to sign off now, but I thought that I would post this video as far as keep it uniform. Not just the bass player, the guitar player, the drummer, keep it uniform. You know, you save, again, all that extra stuff for the live record or the live performances. So I'm going to sign off now. Until next time, take care and thanks for watching.